ancestors did not have food like we have today. They gathered all the food they needed for their own use. Whenever there was a low tide, the people went down to the beaches to gather seafood among the seaweeds and boulders. This was where they found the sea urchins, limpets, and chitons, which they used for food. In Unangam, the word kakamigo means to hunt or fish for food and collect plants. Can you say kakamigo? In this day and age, people hardly eat seafood like they used to in the olden days. In those days, whenever it was low tide, our ancestors gathered blue and brown mussels off the rocks below the tide line. They dug out razor and cockle clams in certain sandy areas. The only kind of fresh fish they caught during the winter was the Japanese perch, Irish lord, and some sculpins among the boulders. During the summer, when food was plentiful, the men would go out fishing for halibut and codfish. These were dried and stored for the winter. The men also fished for freshwater fish in the creeks during the summer and fall. The kinds of freshwater fish caught were pink salmon, red salmon, and silver salmon. These fish were also dried and stored away for the winter. The word for fish in Unangam is koch. Can you say koch? Ducks were also hunted in the summers. Among those eaten were eider ducks. These eider ducks that nested among the tall grasses were grabbed by hand. Both the duck and the eggs were taken. Birds that lived in burrows were also taken for food. These were the puffins and the ancient murrelets. They were pulled out of their burrows, and the eggs were also gathered. The word for bird in Unangam is soch. Can you say soch? Summers were the time when the plants were growing. The people gathered them. Among these plants were the wild cow parsnip or the wild celery. There were also various kinds of plant roots which were taken out of the ground and eaten. Among these plants were the black lily or sarana and white bog orchids. Beach greens such as petruskis were also gathered for food. Preservation of the plants was a problem for the people. They were available to them only during the summers. Berries are picked on top of the hills also during the summers. Among those were the mossberries, blueberries, and strawberries. The word for plants in Unangam is tunuu in Eastern dialect and hitnisis in Atkan dialect. Can you say tunuu? Can you say hitnisis? When winter came, there was hardly any fresh food to be found. The people depended on the food they stored during the summer. When the food supply went low, they were down at the beaches during the low tide to gather seafood to eat. At that time, they could not really go down to the store and buy canned food since there were no stores. This was the way they lived. They always thought about where they would get food for their next meal. Today, whenever one feels hungry, he should think about how our ancestors survived without stores and all the modern conveniences that we now have. How do you think they made it? Take time to ponder this way of life.